Bitcoin has officially taken over Washington. This week, the Genius Act, the first major crypto bill, was signed into law. Not to ban crypto, not to regulate Bitcoin into the ground, but instead to recognize it as the future of finance. Sure, it focused on stablecoins, but make no mistake, the real energy in DC is swirling around Bitcoin. The Fed just greenlit banks to custody Bitcoin. The White House has doubled down on Trump's push to eliminate capital gains on Bitcoin purchases under $600. Then, last night, Trump himself posts what he calls the greatest Bitcoin explanation of all time, a video on social media. And then this morning, he drops a bombshell. Trump media now holds over $2 billion in Bitcoin and Bitcoin related assets. So Bitcoin doesn't need Washington, but it's becoming very clear that Washington needs Bitcoin. All right, everybody, let's break it all down. I am very happy to be joined by my guest today. We've got Tony from the Bitcoin Way. Tony, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic, Rob. How's it going, man? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Yes, I'm your host, Rob Wallace, and we are doing the Bitcoin News Weekly live stream where we break down the biggest headlines from the last week to save you hours of scrolling and make sure that you're up to date and everything in Bitcoin to get you ready for the week ahead. So today I'm joined by Tony, and Tony is an expert in Bitcoin security, self custody, and has learned from life experience just how important Bitcoin is. So, Tony, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a bit about the Bitcoin Way?
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me once again. Yeah, I'm Tony, co-founder of the Bitcoin Way, and here we assist anyone who's interested in learning how to regain full control over their wealth, how to protect it, how to get it right the first time in Bitcoin, all the skills around proper self-custody and essentially the journey to self-sovereignty. So, we focus on Bitcoin, we focus on personal cybersecurity, and we also focus on Plan B residency so that people can move to locations, where they can regain, their time and energy, and they are respected as human beings and not constantly have to battle with, government nonsense and overreach and things of that sort. So we handhold everybody through that process to remove the anxiety of the tech and the fear of making a mistake and losing the funds and what have you. So very excited to be on this journey, meeting a lot of great folks. The awakening, so to speak, it seems to be accelerating, and which makes me even more bullish on the future of Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. You're speaking to Bitcoiners all over the world every day, and it's great to see that we are at this precipice now, where Bitcoin is recognized by more and more people on a daily basis for what it is: a tool for freedom, a way for you to preserve your purchasing power, your hard work over time, and provide a better future for yourself, your family, and those that you care about. And so, let's dive into these headlines. We are going to, it's a little bit of a politics heavy headline show today. And I know that you feel a certain way about government in general, Tony. So I can't wait to hear what you have to say about all this. But the headline for this week's Bitcoin News Weekly, our weekly newsletter, is Washington, D.C. can't stop talking about Bitcoin. So, yes, as you can see, this week we had the Genius Act signed into law. But before we get into the politics stuff, let's talk about adoption. I think stuff that interests you, Tony, stuff that is about freedom tech and making sure that Bitcoin proliferates across the world. So the top one here is Bitcoin over Bluetooth is here. BitChat now lets iOS and Android users send Bitcoin directly phone to phone using built-in Cashew eCash wallets. No internet, just instant, untraceable digital cash. So if we take a look at this video, this was posted by Calais. So BitChat, as we talked about last week, it was a vibe coding weekend project by Jack Dorsey. He wanted to create mesh network messaging so that you could send messages to a friend back and forth without the internet, just over Bluetooth. So of course, Bluetooth messaging is over a shorter distance than, of course, internet messaging is, but it's encrypted. It means you don't need the internet to send messages. And now we've got other developers working on it. And we've got Calais, who's, of course, famous for working on eCash. And so he has updated BitChat. So now you can send eCash back and forth over Bluetooth. So, Tony, tell us what you think about BitChat. And I would love to hear if you have any experience with Bitcoin eCash.
I've used it briefly. I mean, all this new tech that's coming out is extremely exciting for me. I mean, this is exactly the direction that I want to see things headed. These new tools that restore power back to the people. BitChat, I haven't yet had the opportunity to play around with it. I know it's been met with some sort of criticism, people poking fun at it. That if you're so close to someone, why don't you just speak to them? Which is in a way true, but I think the purpose of this app goes way beyond the joke factor. You don't really appreciate the products like this unless you're in a situation that actually requires it. Bitcoin, in extreme scenarios where, let's say, the internet is cut off and people still need to transact and what have you. These are like life-saving tools. It's very hard to perceive their value when you're looking at them from a lens of someone who's always lived in a financially privileged situation and hasn't seen the flip side of when things go really dark. And I think the developers of these technologies, to a certain degree, I think have these people in mind, which is really, really important, because the more they evolve. I mean, now it starts off with apps like this, and then as time progresses, God knows to what it matures into. But bottom line is, this should alleviate any concerns for anyone still thinking that if lo and behold the government shuts down the internet, that somehow Bitcoin is going to die. First of all, that is impossible. And in the slim miraculous chance this were to happen, Bitcoin would be the last thing you'd have to worry about, because everything else would fall apart and we'd have much bigger problems to deal with. So I don't see that happening. But Bitcoin, being made easier to transact with without the need of the internet, huge, huge, huge progress as far as I'm concerned. And a lot of people should be, looking at this as a very bullish sign. So thank you to all the developers, who continuously put in the hard work to come out with this tech, and bullish for the world, man. Like one more thing to be excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a confluence of a bunch of different stuff going on right now, right? With the vibe coding revolution, you can now use AI. You have an idea, you can just talk to an LLM, and you can have a working app within a matter of hours. So a lot of people are scared that AI might take all the jobs, but it's also empowering humans, to take ideas and to create things that they never thought would be possible before. So when it comes to BitChat itself, sending over Bluetooth, yeah, the range is extremely limited. I think 300 meters right now. But if you are, say, in an extremely crowded place, such as a music festival, right? Internet usually doesn't work there. Great place to interact there. On an airplane, no internet, no problem. You can talk to people over Bluetooth there. And as you said, in a disaster zone, if you're cut off from the internet, you can still, if say you're trapped under rubble or something, you can still get a message out. You can still send to people and let them know that they're there. And the cool thing about what Calais is doing in this eCash is that eCash, once it's sent, it's a bearer instrument, right? Of course, it still needs to be redeemed for Bitcoin from the eCash mint, but once that's sent over to someone else's phone, it's theirs, right? You can send a Bitcoin transaction over this Bluetooth mesh network, but it still needs to be confirmed on the Bitcoin blockchain. Whereas with this eCash, once it's sent, it's there, it's yours. So very cool stuff, as you said. And I think another thing I'd like to touch upon with you is this is all great and dandy when everything works and the power's on and whatnot, but people should be practicing for disaster scenarios, right? Once that moment comes up, unless you had the practice, it's ingrained within you, it's going to be hard to draw on those skills. So what do you have to say about that when it comes to Bitcoin and preparing for those situations?
I completely agree with you. And this is something we enforce heavily in a lot of our training at the Bitcoin way, under like disaster recovery scenarios. Like we bring in a lot of cybersecurity know-how into this mix, to account for a lot of scenarios that most people don't even consider. And so, we make it a fact to train all the folks that we work with, so that hopefully they don't, but should they ever encounter a situation like this, the last thing you want them to do is panic or freak out. because that's usually where the mistakes happen. And so we simulate, certain situations, and we go through proper protocol and training to ensure that the user is fully aware of them. And with repetitive practice and muscle memory, the chances of them mucking it up, should they ever encounter themselves in a situation like this, is going to be very close to zero, which is very good. But yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, you shouldn't assume that things will always be, rosy and dandy just because you live somewhere that, appears to be that way for now. The key word being for now. Because, when things break, like I said, they break very, very fast, and you don't know when that day is going to happen. It happened to me, from one day to the next. Literally, I was like in heaven, and the next day I was in hell. So, assuming that things are always going to be, just fine, this day and age, I think that's a dangerous delusion to hide behind.
Yes, as society grows more complex, it does get more fragile. And anybody who's been in Spain in the last summer, they experienced a wide blackout. Right, the internet can go down, and you've got to practice these things. You got to spend a weekend without electricity. Right, I think that's a good. I should take my own advice and try that one out. Right, just to see how it feels, what you would do, what things you don't have on hand, which would be helpful and necessary in that kind of situation. So yeah. Plan for the best, but prepare for the worst, and stack your Bitcoin and make sure you.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can't have enough practice, like you can't be paranoid enough in a way over these things. And that's really the mindset that we have here. Like I'm the type of person who will always tweak and fine tune something every 20 minutes if I can. And I'll push out, the recommendation for folks, to follow, and I'll explain why. So there's no complacency. There's no room for complacency here, because you're really up against a really big monster, really big, bad actor. And so if we want to win, it has to be done, properly. Sort of like, you're building an army, but everybody needs to be synchronized and disciplined, and aligned in the same direction with, little to no errors as much as possible, so that, we gain enough momentum, so that, eventually you make enough headway that, like you mark your spot anymore. And there's no point of, there's the point of no return has already been passed.
Absolutely. And speaking of gaining momentum and moving forward, the next piece in the adoption section is Bitcoin's realized cap surpasses $1 trillion dollars for the first time, 20% of it added in 2025 alone. Unlike market cap, it values each coin at its last moved price, giving a clearer picture of net investor inflows. So I think this is a very powerful chart to take a look at. And so what we're looking at here is realized cap. Market cap is when you take just the last price in which Bitcoin was traded, right now around $19,000, and you multiply that by the amount of coins in circulation, which is 19.89 million, and you get $2.3 trillion dollars. But when you look at realized cap, you're taking every single coin at the last price that they moved, right? So the last time that someone actually, if someone bought Bitcoin for $100 back in 2012, well, that realized cap would be $100, but its market cap, of course, right now is $120,000. So this is the realized cap, and we just surpassed $1 trillion. This shows real world adoption. The fact that this thing is it's really exploding in value right now. And Tony, what do you see when you see this chart? And do you think that this adoption story is really exploding right now before our very eyes?
Man, Bitcoiners have been preaching about this for many years, that this day is going to come. And as bullish as this looks now, this is just, the tip of the iceberg. We haven't seen anything yet. The FOMO is starting to kick in. You're starting to hear about Bitcoin in so many places, places you never dreamed possible. Like governments are talking about it, institutions are talking about it. Everybody under the sun is talking about it. Whether it's for the right reasons or not, that's irrelevant. There's no such thing as bad advertising for Bitcoin. So people come into it, they test it out. So people that understand it, stay for the revolution. People who don't, they trade it or sell it, thinking they made a profit in dollars and what have you. But overall, there's a massive increase in inflows, in traffic, in attention to an asset that is finite in supply. And so eventually, it just takes a little bit of math, common sense to see that Bitcoin is going to be the fastest horse in this race for a very long time. And all the assets globally that people thought, were good investments, good hedges against inflation, they will all fail when compared to Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin will outperform every single one of them, and at some point will become like the black hole that's going to siphon everything that's currently out there right into like an asset that only a tiny amount of people will be able to hold. And if you understand this early enough, well, you'll be part of that club that is really going to win big time in Bitcoin. Overall, everybody wins in Bitcoin, but the those that generally, when you talk about generational wealth, those are usually those that are holding the UTXOs, and those, in my opinion, are going to be less than 3%, maybe even less than the global population that will even have a chance to do so. Even at today's current fiat price of whatever it was, like almost 118, 119, most people are already priced out. I mean, most people to think about owning one Bitcoin, that's like a fairy tale dream. It's not going to happen. And the more time you wait and the more time you waste, the higher that valuation is going to get. And then at some point, unless you're sitting on tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, you're not buying anything. So most people will probably benefit from Bitcoin by earning it, because at some point, the fiat money is going to be worth complete garbage, and no one's going to wants to go to work and get paid with it, because essentially they're going to be working for free. I mean, they're already working for free, those that understand a little bit about money and math. But for the rest, that's where it still hasn't clicked, the pain will get bad enough, and like the bills will rack up, and there's the ability to buy the most basic needs like food and water. Those will seem like a luxury item, and when you get to that stage, that's when you run into serious problems. And people are going to start looking for solutions. What that looks like, it's yet to be seen. I can speak from my experience in Beirut when everything fell apart. That was not a pretty picture, because people resort to insanity, whatever comes to mind instinctively, and that is not a movie you want to live through. So, but overall, Bitcoin's attention is growing exponentially. I mean, even among normies, when you walk out into the street, before you used to say Bitcoin, maybe half of them haven't even heard of it. Now, at least some of them, more of them know what it is. They don't understand anything, but they've heard of it. So that's already, like a step forward, baby steps into hopefully getting a larger percentage of, your regular folks to start paying attention to this, and not, automatically defaulting to all of the, the debunked myths and nonsense, that we've been hearing about for many, many years.
Yeah, Bitcoin is a what they call a Veblen good, where the higher the price goes, the more attractive it is, right? And so, yes, number goes up is the best marketing, and now that we're seeing it at all-time highs, we are finally seeing the Google search traffic go up in terms of Bitcoin. But of course, that also attracts all the other things that come along with it, which are those other cryptos, the scams, the outright Ponzi's, the meme coins that have absolutely no value whatsoever, but those things just hitch onto Bitcoin's bandwagon and go along for the ride as well. So that's why it's so important that people have education, right? That no matter how far we are into this journey, 16 years now, that we still harp on the basics, right? Like you don't need to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can buy a part of a Bitcoin, and that you can still take self custody of that part of a Bitcoin, and it will grow in value over time. And it is just as important to have a little bit of Bitcoin in your own possession with your own ownership of those private keys, to make sure that no matter what happens, you can't be censored, you can transact. And these basics need to be hammered home. I remember them very strongly being talked about back in the bull run of 2020, 2021. And now we've sort of been swept up in this Bitcoin treasury craze. Everybody's talking about stocks and options and income plays on Bitcoin. But the basics still need to be talked about on a daily basis.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. So now let's get into some of these bigger headlines, because part of Bitcoin being more widely talked about and recognized is that now we've got the government taking an interest in Bitcoin. So first headline in terms of Washington D.C. we'll talk about is the OCC, Fed, and FDIC issue a joint guidance on crypto custody, where, according to the rules, banks can now hold crypto for customers, but must have full control of the keys to claim control, right? So there's no shared custody here. If you want to custody your Bitcoin with the bank, you got to give them the keys. So what do you think about this? Do you think that people in the future will be custodying their Bitcoin with banks, and is that a good thing or bad thing?
It's a terrible thing, and I've got very mixed views on this. The governments and institutions adopting Bitcoin and all that stuff, that was unavoidable. It was going to happen no matter, whether we like it or not. The problem with that is that it's being marketed in a way to keep people stuck in their bad habits. Okay. I've said it publicly many times. I don't believe that any government is going to wholeheartedly embrace Bitcoin. It's impossible. It is the asset that was created to put them out of business and to completely strip them out of the power of money. It is an incompatible asset with everything current government stands for, right? So for them to wholeheartedly embrace it, it's not going to happen. People that think they are delusional. It's what they're doing though is that they're adopting it in a way and attacking it at the same time. If the government wanted to attack Bitcoin, how would they do it? They can't attack it head on. They can't. They will lose spectacularly. You cannot stop Bitcoin. So what do? Well, they embrace it, right? But they embrace it and they glamorize it in any way, shape, or form they can. But the motive behind it is to lure you into their version of Bitcoin. The institutions, the banks, the ETFs, they talk about Bitcoin as digital gold. It's the best thing in the universe for the country, for national security, whatever you want to call it. But the one thing they never mention, the two words that will never come out of their mouths are self custody, which are the foundation of the Bitcoin revolution, right? Bitcoin was created to restore power to the people. But with all these concoctions that they're coming up with, under the guise of embracing Bitcoin, what they're doing is that they're keeping people stuck in the bad habits of trusting third parties, trusting governments, trusting institutions with their Bitcoin in the same way they do with their money, thinking somehow it's theirs or that they can do with it whatever they want. This is a very dangerous play here that a lot of people unfortunately are falling into. And it comes, just from either laziness, convenience, whatever you want to call it. It comes from everything except doing the work. The only way you win in Bitcoin is by owning your private keys, self custody. There is no other way. Anything else is a counterparty risk. And at some point, when the timing is right, it will blow up in your face. The Bitcoin, like the money in a bank, is not yours. When the timing is right, you will see a 6102 and everybody's money will disappear under some fabricated, whatever it is, cyber attack, war. You can get as creative as you want with these excuses. And that's when people, again, history never fails to repeat itself, will learn that lesson. And that, unfortunately, is going to hit really hard this time because we're not living in the same times that we were like 100 years ago. Right now, if you look at just the US government, the debt is what, 37, 38 trillion. And now that they removed that imaginary ceiling, God knows how high it goes. When it goes on full throttle, they don't have to seize your bank account like they did to us in Lebanon. By printing it to oblivion, your purchasing value will be zero at some point. So they might as well just have taken it, right? So all of this theatrics that you see about embracing Bitcoin, now they're not even talking about Bitcoin. They're talking about stable coins, right? Because they want to extend the lifeline of the dollar because they know it's failing. So what do they do to keep it alive somehow? Well, now we have stable coins. They embrace it. They regulate it. They enforce even heavier KYC on it so that, people, in like underdeveloped countries, for example, they're like, oh my gosh, this is like the greatest thing because their local currency is worth complete rubbish. So like the next best rubbish is the US dollar. So it's like a level up, right? But it's still within the same confines of worthless money. So what do these people do? They start downloading these digital wallets. They're using stable coins. Life is great. At least it seems to the someone who's completely unaware. But it's like luring sheep into a confined space. Like how do you do it? You put in a lot of food and greenery into that space, so the sheep come willingly in here. And then when they start eating and feeling happy and they get fatter and fatter, that's when they end up at the butcher. So stable coins, in my view, it's the same thing. It's like almost like a trap. You get people used to that convenience, and then when you need it, when the timing is right, boom, you flip the switch. Stable coins, I've always said it, they are a CBDC that hasn't been weaponized yet. What they're doing now is that they're not doing it themselves directly. But what they're doing is that they're having private companies issue, private custodians issue these stable coins, and they're doing it behind the scenes. Because if you think a company like Tether will not comply to government pressure, you're crazy. So
Yeah,
you
I
have to
mean,
be very careful about what you see here. It's great that everybody is talking about this. What's disappointing to me is how many people are celebrating it, thinking it's a good thing. Some people are even going out of their way to think it's a Trojan horse. You have to be very careful when you make these statements. When you're playing with an organization with centuries of experience in tyranny, theft, and pillaging, you're not going to get anywhere by sweet talking them or hoping they're going to play nice with you. Freedom was never given, freedom was always taken. And right now, 8 billion people have the chance to take it peacefully. You don't have to go to war with anyone, you have to kill anyone, you have to do anything crazy. You just have to learn 6 steps, opt out of a system that was created to steal and pillage for years, and adopt a money, real money for the first time, real sound money that no living soul in this universe can corrupt, and that you can fully own by learning 6 or 7 steps. That's it.
so there's two questions off of that I want to ask you. First is, you deal with people in self custody on a daily basis. Do you think that human beings are responsible enough and want to take on that responsibility on the billions of person level, rather than just us couple millions, tens of millions, maybe even 100 plus million Bitcoiners who will take those ownership of their private keys? Do you think there's enough responsibility in this world for people to all own their money like that?
Yes, I do. Most people right now will not do it because for whatever reason, laziness, don't feel like it, don't believe in it. The excuses are infinite. But there is a large amount. There's a large enough number of people that are starting to pay attention. I deal with folks in self custody every single day, 24/7. I see the difference in the crowd coming our way, and I see the difference in the questions they're asking. These are not people that are coming here wondering if Bitcoin is a fiat, is an internet funny money or the scam or get rich quick. They know what it is. They just need to understand how to do it right. Okay, so enough people that do self custody is all that's needed. We don't need 100% adoption, this way for Bitcoin to win. I estimate maybe 8 to 10%, and already you can cause a massive change in the way the world looks just by having these numbers. And I think we can hit them very easily. So I'm bullish on more people, becoming aware of this. And I think as their situation, as their personal situations gets worse, that's when, you start seeing the lens shift from, okay, maybe I need to start asking better questions and understanding what this is about. Otherwise, I'm going to get completely obliterated here. So, yes, I am very bullish on that. But to answer your question, I don't think right now most people will do the work.
Mhm. Got to keep that education going up, as well as, I mean, inflation is a teacher too, right? The more your value gets inflated away, the more you want to protect it. And that's when you learn about Bitcoin. And so the next piece of news I'd like to talk about is about this week, the White House reaffirmed President Trump supports a de minimis tax exemption for purchases under $600 made with Bitcoin. So I have a little video I'd like to share of Bitcoin Magazine's Frank Corva actually in the White House at the White House press briefing asking about this.
Thing the president spoke about in this room. He talked about a $600 de minimis tax exemption for Bitcoin and other crypto spending. So I was just wondering if you could comment on those.
Sure. Well, the president did signal his support for a de minimis exemption for crypto, and the administration continues to be in support of that. We are definitely receptive to it to make crypto payments easier and more efficient for those who seek to use crypto as simple as buying a cup of coffee. Of course, right now that cannot happen, but with the de minimis exemption, perhaps it could in the future, and we will continue to explore legislative solutions to accomplish that.
So yes, you can't buy coffee with Bitcoin right now, so they say. So little do they know. But yeah, what do you think about this? $600, is that nothing? Should it be priced in Sats instead? What's your feel about this, or is this just another wolf in sheep's clothing to you?
The whole thing is bullshit. Like, why do you even need their permission to use Bitcoin? Like, who cares what they say? What did you think they were going to say? They're going to tell you, okay, well, Bitcoin is tax free for everyone. Go have fun, and live happily ever after. Like I said earlier, it makes no sense for a government to embrace it. What they're doing is, like, they literally think the American people are morons. That's, for me, this is what I take from this. Like, you're giving someone's permission to use something that's not even yours, like a quota, a $600 quota to use it. Like, who the hell do you think you are? This thing was created with or without your blessing. It's going to exist whether you like it or not. People can use it whether you approve of it or not. Nobody needs your permission. But the problem is, a lot of people still think that they do. And so until that mindset breaks, you're gonna have like silly people waiting, following the rules, even though the cage is wide open for them to completely opt out and play by a set of rules that were created specifically to put that garbage out of business permanently, right? So the fact that they're like, here's your $600 tip. Like, they're almost like laughing at you. Like, how people don't see that, for me, is like mind blowing. And so that's where the education needs to come in. That's where the self-confidence needs to get boosted. That's where, people need to start thinking again, right? Bitcoin doesn't need any government approval. The fact that they adopt it, they talk about it, that's unavoidable. Bitcoin's for the good, the bad, the ugly, the retarded, for anyone, right? But you have to be in charge of your own keys. So as long as you understand what Bitcoin represents, that it's freedom money, that's the value of Bitcoin. It's not in dollars. You don't measure your wealth in a worthless piece of paper that is printed to oblivion by a bunch of Looney Tunes. That's not wealth. Okay. The yield on Bitcoin is your freedom. That is the value. That is what Satoshi Nakamoto envisioned for the world. He didn't envision you to get rich by selling Bitcoin to accumulate more paper, right? That's not what it was for. It was for building a world, hopefully at some point, based on sound, incorruptible money. And that's the only way the world will upgrade to a better one. As long as people think they need permission, nothing will change, at least for them. But like I said, there's a growing number of folks that understand what I'm saying. And to them, the fiat world simply doesn't exist. Blah, 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 blah. It's just noise in the background. Whatever they say doesn't matter because they cannot stop peer to peer technology. They can't. And so it's going to exist. So you stop an on ramp for dollars, who cares? There's going to be someone somewhere else who's going to accept Bitcoin because it has more value than that worthless piece of paper. And more people, more merchants, especially every day, are adopting it. This is why I said earlier that I'm extremely bullish because I see the shift in people simply, in the small circles that we, interact with. Already there's a monumental change in conversations, in mindset, in questions, in approach to this. So you want to ask permission, you want to clap for the team that's responsible for destroying your life, that's your choice. In my opinion, you're much better off, you know, reading a few books, watching a few videos, asking a few intelligent questions, and just regaining control of your entire time and energy. You can do it. This isn't rocket science. It's literally 6 or 7 steps that you have to learn, and you're home free.
I love it. Yes, we've got Nima over on YouTube comment saying Tony doesn't sugarcoat it. You say it like it is. Yeah, I think right now in terms of Bitcoin culture, it's a lot of, as you said, cheerleading for the government's increased interest in it, for corporations acquiring more Bitcoin, and we can't forget the real mission here. Bitcoin is freedom money and can lead to a much better future if we use it in the way that it was intended to in the beginning. Uh, but it is a free and open network, which means anyone can interact with it. And that means that, yes, corporations and governments will. So,
Look, I understand why people cheerlead for it. It's because they're under the impression that it's going to fast track the adoption of Bitcoin, right? Like, I mean, for Bitcoin itself, all of this attention is good news. Like I said, there's no bad advertising for Bitcoin. The bad news is for folks that are doing it wrong. Like if you're custodying your Bitcoin, with an institution or a bank, or worse, you're holding an ETF thinking it's actually Bitcoin, you're gonna get rug pulled, at some point, and you're going to like wonder what the hell happened. This is my issue with all of this, is that it's keeping people from really seeing the truth behind what's right in front of them. So as far as Bitcoin adoption, of course, you want the more governments are on your side and they stay out of the way. It's not bad news, but what they're trying to do is lure you into maintaining your bad habits, and that is terrible news that people are going to realize at some point.
speaking of bad habits, yes, the next headline here falls right into that. So, this week, a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request, reveals that the U.S. Marshals hold just 29,000 Bitcoin, only 15% of the 200,000 once believed to be held by them. The low figure has sparked speculation of secret government sales, though it may only include forfeited but not seized coins. So we've got the great journalist Lola Leitz. She
Mm.
writes for The Rage. She, back in March, issued a letter to the Department of Justice to see how much Bitcoin was held by the U.S. Marshals, because they have an agreement with Coinbase. Whenever there's been seized Bitcoin in administrations past that did not like it, they would, of course, put some up for sale. And America has sold over 200,000 Bitcoin, right? And so it was believed that they still held 200,000 or so Bitcoin to this day. But this Freedom of Information Act request revealed that the U.S. Marshals only hold 28,988 Bitcoin. This is pretty shocking, though there is some clarification that needs to be made here. The coins here held by the marshals are the ones that have been forfeited. So I guess if you get caught by the government and they ask you to give up your coins, you give them up. That goes to them, but not seized. So other agencies, such as the FBI or the IRS, could have seized Bitcoin from other criminals, quote unquote, and thus have different pots of Bitcoin within the U.S. government. But if we look at this article here back from February, the U.S. Marshal Service can't say how much crypto it holds, complicating the Bitcoin reserve plan. So this is a great article to look back on. And these guys really have no idea what they're doing in terms of proper key management, holding on to their Bitcoin and keeping track of it. If the government can't keep hold of a Excel spreadsheet and keep it straight, it's pretty shocking stuff. They said it was very, very insecure. It's just shocking that nothing happened in the years they did that. So it's a joke, right? The government itself can't even keep track of its own keys, and the U.S. Marshals only have 29,000. We don't know if that's the total of the U.S. government right now, but that's the only number that we've been able to verify in terms of the government holdings. What is this story? What do you think about this when you hear this, Tony?
We joked about this internally at the Bitcoin Way. I was saying, Satoshi created Bitcoin for the separation of money and state. And it looks like the US government supports this motion because, they're getting rid of their own coins. So if that's what they're doing, well, kudos to you. If this is true, and I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's true because, I mean, these guys, like you said, they don't understand anything. I mean, if you were dealing with an inefficient organization, you wouldn't be $38 trillion in debt, right? But when you do what you want, when you steal, pillage, and just go do whatever comes to mind, and you hit a money printer whenever you run out of cash, well, these are the results that you get. I don't know what more to add, man. I mean, we
Yeah.
made fun of we made fun of Germany because they sold their coins, so we labeled them as the Guinness World Record for stupidity. But if this report is true, well, then the U.S. just claimed that title, right? So it's like it seems to be moving along, from country to country as we discover, more brilliant decisions made by governments worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, the high watermark for the peak of Bitcoin holdings by the U.S. government was over 400,000. They've sold at least half of that. And Sani EXP over on X, definitely go give him a follow. He's one of the best on-chain analysts out there. He says that the government still does have 199,000 coins. But the one stipulation there is all these coins the U.S. Marshals have are held by Coinbase. Who else has their coins there? MicroStrategy, BlackRock ETF. So it's very easy for Coinbase to not have to buy and sell when these people are accumulating more coins rather than just relabel them, right, within their own internal database. And thus, you never see the on chain transaction. And thus, you don't really know if those coins have moved out until there's an official announcement.
It's so convoluted, man. It's very hard to understand everything because, and eventually the truth will come out. But I mean, it's not something that we're going to readily, get next week, so to speak. So far, I mean, if you've looked since President Trump took office, I mean, from all the marketing that he came in strong with, how much of it has actually happened?
Yeah, I mean, they signed this executive order for a strategic Bitcoin reserve, but they also said they'd give an audit of the full Bitcoin holdings by the US government within 60 days. That has not happened. So, yes,
It's,
there's.
it's it's not just that. I mean, just count them. First of all, we're going to cut expenses. Doge was formed. Okay, first theatric. How long did that last? Boom. No, there's no Doge. Then we're gonna audit Fort Knox. Everybody got excited. All right, where's that audit? Gone. Who knows? Then we're going to, go after the Epstein list. Oh shit! We just realized there is no list. Sorry, guys. All right, move on. What's next? Bitcoin strategic reserve. Where is it? All we hear is about everything else except for Bitcoin strategic reserves. So what happened to that? Who knows? It's like it's not a priority right now. What else you want to add to that list? Like just look at the signs. It's not just hypotheticals. They are right there in front of everybody, and yet nobody like it doesn't register with enough people that this system is only going to go round in circles to nowhere good. The only way you're going to benefit from it is by exiting it. You're not gonna make any headways by waiting around to maybe they come up with some miraculous solution to make your life better. It goes against the DNA of that organization. It's just not the way it works.
Yes, and you gotta exit the system in your own way, and a peaceful way of doing that is getting Bitcoin, of course. So, everyone, right now we've got 1,947 people tuning in live. Thank you so much for watching. It would help a lot if you hit that like button, or repost it on X, like it, subscribe over on YouTube, and at this juncture, I would like to give a big shout out to our main sponsor, Rhino Bitcoin. Rhino is the all-in-one Bitcoin super app built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. You can buy or sell your Bitcoin instantly. You can send sats anywhere on the Lightning Network, withdraw straight to cold storage, and even turn sats into gift cards or link to a Casa multisig, all within the app. And Rhino is just warming up. Soon you'll be able to pay bills, borrow against your Bitcoin, and stack for retirement without leaving. Download Rhino at rhinobitcoin.com or just tap the link below in the description. You can see, got the app right here. It's a great place. Got the buy, sell, do whatever you want. And if you use the promo code Bitcoin News, Rhino will drop you $10 of Bitcoin straight into your account today. So, yes, check out Rhino, use it. I use it. I love Rhino. Love the guys at Rhino. Check out their X page right now. They're actually got a giveaway. They're giving away 1,000,000 sats over the course of the rest of July. So go check it out, download it, onboard, be part of the competition, see if you can win some sats. And yes, big thank you to the guys over at Rhino. Yeah, so I want to bring Tony back up here. And Tony, we still got some more headlines to go. I want to get your take on the whole Bitcoin treasury companies going on right now. So we've got Strategy. They just crossed the 600,000 Bitcoin mark, right? They added another 700 million purchase just this morning, bringing their total to 607,770 Bitcoin in total. Yeah, I mean, they're at essentially 3% of the total Bitcoin supply. Do you think this is healthy for the Bitcoin network for just one entity to control that much? And at what percentage of the total Bitcoin supply would you start to get concerned?
Look, it's healthy for strategy. It's not healthy for those who think buying it is actually buying Bitcoin, which is what a lot of folks seem to be doing. All of these Bitcoin treasuries, as far as I'm concerned, is something that most people should not come within, any proximity to. They're not for you. Unless you're an experienced investor and you know exactly what you're doing and you've read all the terms of conditions and you can do math properly, this is a recipe for disaster. The problem is sometimes they're hyped as products that will give you enormous profits. They're going to outperform Bitcoin and outperform this. You're going to become super rich. Whereas most folks that enter these fiat games come out with nothing. Why would you buy a proxy to Bitcoin, a worthless stock share, based in fiat, when you have a direct link to the asset that the company itself is buying? It makes no logical sense. Companies like these Bitcoin treasuries, what are they doing? They're buying Bitcoin, putting it in their treasury, and they're issuing their stock, and they're selling you that garbage. And they're benefiting by, unknowing investors coming in thinking they're going to get rich. Rich in what? You're getting rich in worthless paper that if you make a money in, you're going to get taxed to oblivion for. Then you have to deal with the debasement. And then, if you do all the math, what are you left with? Was it worth the risk? Absolutely not. Whereas you could have simply gone, bought the underlying asset that company whose stock, you thought was, like the winning ticket, and hold it yourself in self-custody. And then you would have actually had the winning horse in the race. Because Bitcoin's appreciation per year is at minimum 50% if you're being conservative. I think in the very short term, Bitcoin's appreciation is going to be explosive because you're going to get like a tsunami of attention from all different industries and markets that are going to come, full throttle into something with a limited supply. This is why I think very soon, maybe even this year, the days of buying Bitcoin on an exchange, like holding the UTXO, those will be gone, man. I mean, unless you're sitting on tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, you're not buying anything. Because I don't think governments and institutions buying Bitcoin today are buying it to speculate. They are buying it because they plan on creating financial empires by offering you all sorts of crazy services using Bitcoin. That's what they're planning on doing. So if when they buy it, consider it gone. And so at some point, if you're still like hovering around zero and like wondering, yes, no, maybe, well then you're gonna wake up and realize that shit, I should have bought it, but now it's too late, and it will be too late. So don't touch fiat games. And another thing about this that I don't like is that they just extend the lifeline of the very system Bitcoin was created to obsolete, right? So if people think they're going to keep making profits in dollars or euros or whatever it is, all you're doing is like extending the lifeline of that horrible system that has made everybody's life a living hell. Why? Like, what do you want to accumulate? More paper, more debasing paper? To what end? People argue, okay, well, I'll invest in this, make a lot of dollars, and then use them to buy Bitcoin. How many people can do this? Like, if you were to take 10 people, maybe one, and that's someone who has tons of experience doing this type of activity. Your average Joe has no clue what they're doing. Yet, they're lured to believe that this is easy money. And so for me, the advice when people tell me, what do I do about Bitcoin treasuries? I'm like, you avoid them completely. You go buy Bitcoin straight. And then, you have the other things, borrowing against your Bitcoin. That's another service that's put out there to separate like most people from their Bitcoin. Because one, you have to relinquish custody, right? So what happens if that enterprise that you're using to borrow against your Bitcoin goes under? Oh no, it's impossible. They're regulated. Really? What happened to Gemini, FTX, and all these other regulated, compliant, so very fancy and highly reputable exchanges? Where are they now? Again, you see, people still don't learn. They still believe that this one's going to do it better than the last one, and they repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again. Borrowing in Bitcoin, bad idea for most people. Unless you know exactly what you're doing and you actually read the terms and conditions and you understand them like you can spell your own name, it's not for you. And if you're going to do them, you better have a lot of Bitcoin on hand in case you have this sudden black swan event that'll drop the market to a point where and if you can't back it up with collateral, you can kiss your Bitcoin goodbye and you're never going to see it again. So all these fiat games are not for your average person. They're for like a tiny percentage of the world population that has experience in them. So my answer to all of these, fiat theatrics, stay away. Bitcoin is your answer. You buy it, you hold it, you learn how to use it. That's it.
Yeah, it all boils down to fear and greed, as most things do when it comes to finance, right? And a lot of people at this point, 16 years in, are afraid that they missed the boat, right? Bitcoin's $120,000. I need to catch up, and they think that if they play these treasury stocks, they'll be able to get a greater return on their dollars, and then, as you said, turn that into Bitcoin. But once you've made some money on these treasury stocks, then you get greedy and you think it's going to keep going up, and you miss the opportunity to make that trade and to transform those worthless pieces of paper into actual cold hard Bitcoin. So yeah, I mean they've definitely been the narrative of this cycle. This last year has been dominated by the stories of coffee shops in Spain buying Bitcoin, right? But we gotta make sure that our eyes are on the prize here, on the mission, and
Look, it's great for people holding Bitcoin in self custody. If you're someone who understands Bitcoin and are holding it in full self custody, you've already won. There's nothing for you to do further for you to do other than just to sit tight and watch your purchasing power increase. By the end of this year, I believe Bitcoin's purchasing price is going to be like, I don't know, like much higher than where it is now. And the more these treasuries come in, of course, it's going to inflate the Bitcoin price like crazy. But my concern is like any other bubble, once it bursts, it's going to come crashing down. A lot of people are going to get totally wrecked. And then God knows what that translates into. So if it affects the Bitcoin price, it will be something very short-lived because there's a lot of sharks out there that are waiting for occasions like this to siphon it up.
well said. And one more story I would like to get your opinion on today. This is in our politics section. Of course, this is the Bitcoin News Weekly newsletter. Go over to weekly.bitcoinnews.com, go sign up, get it in your inbox every Monday morning. Get up to date with all the headlines, all the Bitcoin stuff you need to know is right here. And to finish off the politics section here, so the IMF put out a report last week suggesting that El Salvador has stopped actively buying Bitcoin since it signed its deal with them back in early of 2025. So instead, it implies that the government is just consolidating existing holdings across government wallets. And so the Bitcoin office of El Salvador usually posts a chart of the Bitcoin number going up of 1 Bitcoin a day for their strategic Bitcoin reserve. But the IMF, they signed a deal with them, and one of the stipulations was that no more public money could go into buying Bitcoin. So, what's your take on El Salvador and the Bitcoin experiment going on there?
Man, I'm very torn about this. Like on one side, like I don't trust any politicians, but I genuinely like Nayib Bukele. I think he's a very good human being with very good intentions, and he's done a lot of good for the country. You cannot deny that. But when you make a deal with the devil, you can't expect to play by your rules anymore, right? So I don't know. Nobody that the actual truth about this story is, yet to be seen. I don't want to jump to any conclusions. It's foolish at this point. I hope it's wrong. But something doesn't add up here. I mean, they claim that it's just consolidating wallets, internally, and that he hasn't bought anything. So you'd assume that they've, cut him dead in his tracks when it comes to anything useful around Bitcoin. But yet, at the same time, you also read that he's making deals with Pakistan around Bitcoin mining, which was something else that the IMF has strictly, said was forbidden, right? So, where's the truth? Like, is the IMF trying to concoct some other hit piece to sort of like blemish the guy's reputation? Or is Nayib Bukele playing another form of 4D chess that we're not aware of right now? Because, like the two facts that we know of, they're in opposite directions. They contradict each other. So I'm just waiting to see, if more news comes out, and I genuinely hope that they have been buying and that they continue to buy, and they don't, bend the knee to a criminal organization, essentially. But I personally was against them taking an IMF loan. I mean, I didn't understand why they would do it in the first place. I'm sure he had his reasons. I mean, I'm not privy to what goes on government levels in El Salvador, but just logically speaking, you don't make a deal with the devil and expect to play with your own rules. That's just a life lesson that, I learned a very long time ago.
Yeah, and I think whether it's El Salvador or the US Marshals, the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, we see these efforts for top down Bitcoin adoption being a lot harder to get going and have real roots compared to grassroots Bitcoin adoption, right? Still, I think the most amazing things to come out of El Salvador are the education initiatives, right? Like Kubo Plus and Me Premier Bitcoin, the circular economies, Bitcoin Beach, Berlin. These things are real, and they were started by the people. They're what inspired Bukele to get into Bitcoin in the first place, right? So while yes, this IMF deal, it's weird, right? There's two, it seems, propaganda machines going back and forth, trying to spin different narratives, and it's hard to get to know which tail is up. But what we do know is that dozens, hundreds, thousands of people are getting educated on Bitcoin on a daily basis within El Salvador. We just posted a video of students in a classroom setting up a Start9 Bitcoin node, right? And like, how cool would that have been to have had that kind of education when we were kids, to learn about Bitcoin in the classroom and have it be fun and inspiring, and to show what a difference it can make in your life and how easy it is once you really just get your hands dirty and start playing with it. So yeah, it's hard to say what's really going on here, but El Salvador, because of these ground up education initiatives and the circular economies, still is Bitcoin country, and lots of cool things are coming out of there.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's no bad advertising for Bitcoin, man. You talk about it in any shades you like, people start to pay attention to it. And eventually, enough people, it resonates with enough people, they take the right actions, and boom.
Yes. And before we end up here, I'd like to just point out that every week we have Bitcoin trivia. We've got a question here. I actually said the answer earlier on in this live stream, so you can go check that out and get the right answer for this week's trivia. But we have winners from last week, and the winner gets 21,000 sats. So let's see who answered correctly last week and gets 21,000 sats sent directly to them, which one day could very well be generational wealth. And the winner is AndyMar.nft. We will reach out to you and make sure that you get your Bitcoin. Thank you very much for participating. We like to make sure that all of our people who are subscribe and watch are rewarded for being a part of the Bitcoin news community. So, Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure spending this last hour with you. Is there anything you would like to leave the audience with? Where should they go to find out more about the Bitcoin way?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone who's interested to come talk to me, my DMs are always open. Please visit thebitcoinway.com. We do offer a free complimentary 30-minute call to anyone. There's no obligation. Just come say hi, find out what we do, learn a few things, make a new friend. It's everybody's welcome. My piece of advice is for folks to really, do your due diligence and do what's best for you and your families. And the answer is just staring you in the face. It's literally 6 or 7 new steps that you have to learn that'll completely change your life in ways you can never possibly imagine until you learn these steps. The power of self-custody is unmeasurable. It's this quiet, invisible power that really changes the way you walk through this world, because you are no longer begging for permission, my friend. You are no longer at anybody's mercy. And once you feel that freedom, you get a taste for it. I can promise you with 100% certainty, there's no going back.
100%. And I can say personally, from a personal standpoint, I've been a client of the Bitcoin Way, extremely happy with the services you guys have provided. Your whole team, you, Ahmed, Andy, all great guys. They really take a personal interest into each person that they work with, and couldn't recommend you guys any more highly. So
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We are here every Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern, with the Bitcoin News Weekly live stream, breaking down all the biggest headlines in Bitcoin with a new guest each and every week. Thank you so much, Tony. And
My pleasure, man. Thank you for having me, Rob. Always a pleasure, man.
cheers. Bye bye.